All right. So obviously we are going to be talking about something that's near and dear and close to my heart. I've been promoting it a lot, but also I'm on board with maybe just having no political parties whatsoever, but the need for third parties, the need for independent movements. And obviously we have a wide range of individuals that either ran as green, libertarian, independent, or other. So starting with Joe and obviously ending with Madeline, please introduce yourself and what political party or is that independent organization you are with in regards towards running up against the two-party system that likes to dictate control over the American people. Joe.
Well, this one's actually an interesting situation because I took a leave of absence from the Libertarian Party midway through the last election cycle, simply because of the issues with internal politics and the things that were going on. I realized that both of the second, numbers 3 and 4, had been heavily compromised by elements of the Republicans and the Democrats. And as a result, it was one of those things you have to step back and go, well, how much can I support where they want to go with the radicalized messaging, and continue the operation. But I did run as a libertarian candidate for 3 cycles, well, 2.5 technically. And I also did an awful lot of work with the Green Party of Idaho prior to that. And a lot of this was about the movement for peace activism, the movement for legalization, the movement to create choice and opportunity, and a decentralization by giving states back their power, taking the power from the federal government and returning it to the states so that it was under localized control rather than centralized control. We continue to take a look at that development, and there are over 100 different parties across the United States in different groups. One of the most successful parties 2 years ago was the Legalized Marijuana Now Party. And this was a single issue party that grew up in, I think, Michigan and Wisconsin with the intent of running third party candidates solely to get marijuana legalized in their states. They generated a 15% success rate in 3-way races. This is something neither the Greens nor the Libertarians have been able to accomplish at any point, in their history on a 3-way level. Sure, they've seen benefits in 2-way races where it's anybody but the incumbent. But when it comes to the 3-way races, two major legalized marijuana now, the LMNOP party.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the other one, but yeah, 2 of them in Minnesota. Johnny's got that right. But when it comes to independence, state of Idaho, huge independent movement. Regardless of how you feel about Ammon Bundy ran on an independent ticket and polled 17% of the vote as an independent in an extremely red, extremely conservative state that's very secure in the dominant party, the Republican Party. So it's absolutely essential that we have that kind of pressure from the independent and third parties, regardless of what's going on, but mainly the independents that say, hey, we can run on a single issue and we can poll 16% of the vote. So this is a critical issue. It's a critical time for third parties and independent movements to make those inroads into the political system as it stands and start weakening the infrastructure that has sustained the dual party system for so long.
All right. Terrence, your turn. Please introduce yourself and tell us what organization or political party you are associated with and state as well, because I think we need to start bringing more attention to third parties. Terrence, unfortunately, you muted yourself, my friend.
My bad. Sorry. Hi, everybody. My name is Terrence Cudney, and I ran as an independent for state senate on the North Shore of Massachusetts, so sort of the northeastern quadrant of the state, and it was as a first-time candidate last cycle, and happy to be here with y'all.
All right. Fantastic. All right. Eric, you are running as a Libertarian U.S. Senate nominee. Welcome so much. Please introduce yourself.
Yep, I'm Eric Gerhardt. I was the 2020 U.S. Senate nominee against Oz and Fetterman. We did fairly well. I agree with the other person. We do need to have what our niche is and our single topic, run on those issues, especially in local races, keep it simple, and give them some hurt, because them two parties, they need to go down for sure.
All right. And then finally, Madeline, the floor is yours. Please introduce yourself and tell us some of the work that you have done.
Okay, I'm really happy to be here on this New Year's Eve special. My name is Madeline Hoffman. Thank you, Kit. I'm a veteran of the political wars, if you will, the political wars of being a third-party candidate. I've run as a Green 6 times. And starting way back in 1996, when Ralph Nader embarked on his first presidential run in the United States, I was his vice presidential running mate in New Jersey. And we were talking then about how, we have to get out of this bind of voting for the lesser of two evils. Because, as Ralph Nader said, and I agree, if you're voting for the lesser of two evils, you're still voting for evil, and the evil becomes more, and the candidates become lesser and lesser. And I fast forward this to 2016, when Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were the two main party, mainstream party candidates for president, and they were the two least popular candidates in history running for that office. So if we had 20 years prior started to do what Ralph Nader and I in New Jersey were calling for then, about implementing ranked choice voting, I heard you mention that in your previous panel. If we had started making changes, reforming the electoral process now 25, 26 years ago, look where might we be now, instead of really in a totally dysfunctional situation where the Democrats have become the Republicans and the Republicans have become the Democrats. And you can't tell who's the lesser of two evils anymore, because they're both evil and they both support billions of dollars for war. And they neither support Medicare for all, or elimination of student loan debt, or a real Green New Deal confronting the problems of our environment. I'm so frustrated, but I will speak more about the specifics of that when it's my turn.
Well, then that's a good segue. And obviously, for this next question, Madeline will be starting off with you, Eric, Terrence, Joe, and then Daniel. So I guess I'm going to be the don't shoot the messenger here, but I might sound like a bad guy towards third parties. So please, everyone, take it a little bit easy on yours truly. But here at Heartlands Media, we've done numerous reports on the Illinois Greens, the Illinois Libertarians, and the huge mountains that they had to climb over in regards towards getting on the ballot. And in the rare cases, being on the debate stage, which was next to none. It's not their fault. Illinois has very harsh and tough draconian rules towards third parties, and it's extremely difficult. And throughout our coverage, especially with the aftermath of 2016, but even more so before 2016, third parties have been vilified as a spoiler vote, that is a hindrance to democracy, that it's an obstruction to the American people. We've seen Ralph Nader become vilified. We saw Ross Perot become a laughingstock when he made that vacuum cleaner noise, even though he was hitting the nail on the head with what would happen with NAFTA. No one's laughing now. We've seen what happened with Dr. Jill Stein and other who was part of the Green Party, but we've seen libertarians also get vilified. We saw smaller parties of the Liberation Party in Virginia when the candidate who was running as an independent was forcibly removed. We've seen even how Kashama Swant, who's part of Social Alternative, not a political party, but a political organization, constantly get attacked by both Democrats and Republicans The question to this panel is: do third parties pose a risk? Why should people consider supporting third parties? Should people even consider it, knowing that there is such a huge uphill fight to even get third parties on the ballot and on the debate stage? I'm not trying to sound antagonistic, but I have been promoting third parties, and in many ways, I've been disappointed with some of the current leadership in regards to them getting attention on independent media. Madeline, you started off.
Yeah, I have an unambiguous answer, which is yes, support third parties. Yes, build third parties. Yes, build something independent of the Republicans and Democrats. As a third party candidate in the last 4 years, 3 times in the last 4 years, I came in third all 3 times, albeit a million votes behind the Republican in New Jersey, but there was sufficient support and growing support for the third party's position because it's people oriented. It's not big money oriented. In New Jersey, unfortunately, when I ran for governor in 2021, I had to raise, or any independent had to raise, at least $490,000 in order to be allowed to be on that debate stage. When I first ran for governor in 1997, that amount was $21,900. So the number, it continually goes up and up and up. And my belief is that without third parties and without independent voices, we're doomed as a country. I mean, we may still be, but I'd rather go down fighting and speaking out clearly about what is going on here and the role of big money. I mean, look, the last military budget is almost $1 trillion. It's getting closer and closer, and more Democrats voted for it than Republicans. So we can't tell the difference anymore between who's who. And when all that money is being spent on war, there isn't any money for the things that people need. By the way, Princess Blanding and I cross-endorsed each other in 2021 because we were the only 2 women running for governor that year, and we had similar kinds of platforms because the issues that people care about are pretty much the same across the board. Whether you're a libertarian, whether you're well, I don't know about conservatives, but we all need health care, as evidenced by what happened during the pandemic. We all need more choices at the ballot box. I think, most people would agree that ranked choice voting is really important. And so the voices of the independents are necessary. It's not easy to run as an independent at all. I know you're well aware of that. And that's why you didn't blame the Ohio Green Party for what happened. But imagine a world without them. Imagine a world without people pushing from the outside. I mean, you see the so-called squad, the progressives, quote unquote, progressive squad. They have nowhere to go. I mean, if they came out on the left, the higher ups in the Democratic Party pulled them to the right. The Bernie Sanders of the world, I never thought he was sufficiently progressive, okay, but he has nowhere to go. There needs to be a formation, an independent formation of people outside of the Democratic Party and Republican Party. And you know what? If it were a coalition of independent parties pushing for an end to the corruption, pushing for an end to big money's influence on politics, pushing against war, pushing for Medicare for all, that would be even better than even just, the Greens or the Libertarians, but us all working together.
Eric, the floor is yours. Time. Yeah. Yes, Eric. Well, yes, the floor is yours.
So the question was, should third parties be included in independence? And obviously, we have a huge glaring need because of the lesser of two evils, of which it's just flat out evil on both sides. They're both in cahoots. Their votes have been showing they're nothing but in cahoots. 18 people voting for the last budget bill with more aid to Ukraine, which we're never going to see that back in any way, shape, or form. Where they're going to sell the oil and gas that from the pipelines that we allowed over there, while people here at America can't get gas and oil, and prices are skyrocketing. We're taking it out of our reserves. The national security and the threat to our nation has never been greater from the inside and our own government, which is horrible. But that's what we're facing right now. I mean, they're making people force vaccinations, forced to get it to keep your job. They just had to overturn it because our military is failing because they can't get enough people. Plus, that's their own personal choice. It always should be your own personal choice on what and how you put into your body and how you live your life. Healthcare for all. Yeah, everybody should have healthcare, but it shouldn't be the government giving you healthcare and making it their stipulation on how you get it, and cutting the third parties of independent insurers out that bring competition to keep costs down. We need privatization across the globe in our nation, away from our government in every shape or form. Every time they want another little chunk of somebody's pie, we need to get online, get talking to people, and let them know that they are the problem. It's not us, it's them. It's obviously them, and everybody's seeing that, which, I mean, it's only becoming more and more glaring. Even with this last election, the fact that they didn't allow me into the debate because they said I needed 10% polling when they obviously saw I had like 8.9%. They just raised the numbers so I couldn't get in. So many other things. And the debate they put on, you got a stroke victim and a TV doctor. You put somebody in there who is a regular citizen against that, they look like fools. And the time's coming that they're going to be going down hard. I'm probably going to be running again in 2024. I don't know what for yet, but I got a lot of things in the books. Plus, Pennsylvanians are pissed right now. I mean, I almost had 100,000 of them.
And obviously, the election you're talking about was the race where Dr. Oz was facing off against Fetterman, which was probably the greatest symbol of memes in history ever, was those two individuals. But that's a story for another day. We'll talk about how embarrassing that election was. All right, I want to hand it over to our next colleague who's joining on the panel. Your thoughts again? Third parties, do we need them? Are they truly the risk to democracy? Are they a hindrance? Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, in terms of should we support third parties, as an independent, I can definitely say we absolutely have to. I think, to Madeline's point, I think it's difficult sometimes to tell the difference between your average Democrat and your average Republican, and that's a huge problem. I was thinking of your second part of the question in a different way. Do third parties pose a risk? I was thinking of it in the sense of, do they pose a risk to the establishment? And I think, unfortunately, the answer right now is no. I mean, we have to build these parties up in order to get us to a place where they can pose a risk. But do they pose a risk to democracy? No, I'd say quite the opposite. I think if you want more democracy, you need more parties, and that's kind of the way it works. Just with the way that we're factionalized as a society. And to Roger Meadows' point, who I've gotten to know Roger a little bit over the last couple of months. I think the unfortunate truth, and Roger and I disagree on this, is that factions form. It's a nature of humanity that factions will emerge regardless of our kind of desires to thwart that. And so I think parties will continue to exist. It's difficult to imagine a world in which there are no parties. As much as some of our founders desired for there to be no parties, I just have a lot of trouble seeing a world emerge like that. But for my part, I support democracy reform that would put more power in the hands of third parties. Things like ranked choice voting, which I guess has been talked about today. I'm actually more of a proponent of star voting. But I think that, some of the energy is there, especially in my state, in Massachusetts, to get us to ranked choice voting, which is, I think, a step in the right direction. So democracy reform, as much as we can get it, is, I think, the pathway to build more power or more, ability to attain power for third parties. So that's something that I'd very much love to see. But yeah, I think the unfortunate answer right now is that they don't pose a risk to the establishment. But they certainly are much sorely needed for the sake of our democracy.
All right, Joe. Unfortunately, you're still muted, my friend. There you go.
I keep running into that issue, don't I? Third parties and independents are absolutely integral to sustaining and retaining democracy in the United States. Now one of the problems we have from a libertarian perspective is the idea of the collective, the idea of the 50% plus one being able to dominate and exploit the 50% minus one simply because of what it is. Regardless of how I feel about the framers of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights was one of those that set down the rules that said there are inherent rights as citizens of the United States, as residents of each state, that are inviolable. So collectively, we can go for the vote as long as the vote is not one that denies rights to a minority or to a smaller group or a smaller organization. And I think that's one of the things that we lost somewhere along the way, because we continue to see voting build that isolates and prevents the individual from being able to exercise their rights within their community, to build their community in ways that they see as being better for everybody. We have a series of problems right now where we have universal policies that affect everybody in the United States. My go-to on this is education. The Secretary of Education, the Department of Education, it doesn't matter whether you're going to grow up to be a factory worker in Flint, Michigan in the car shop, or whether you're going to grow up to be an agricultural worker in Idaho or Nebraska. You run into the same problem in that you aren't educated for the community that you are going to grow up in. You're educated according to a universal policy at the federal level. We need to break away from that, again, back to decentralization, redistribution, a distributed architecture, a distributed America. And we'll talk about it later, Kit, when we go in. What are the failings of the Federation? Why did we not make it there? Mm-hmm. And third parties and independents are essential to being able to break the current tribalization.
Right. And for those of you who don't know, the third panel will be about the failure of science fiction empires and so much more. So there you go. Obviously, now I want to hand it over, and I left him for last. Daniel. For those who don't know, Daniel was the man behind the camera for a lot of our earlier work from 2017 to 2019 covering third parties. You have a different perspective, and I think in many ways it's something that we've talked about off camera about third parties and independence. So Daniel, I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I have a lot of seemingly contradictory takes on this, but I think they all line up pretty well. So I think on the first point, what everyone said, I want the two parties to not have as much power as they do. So obviously, and Kit had actually, when you did the recent interview with Larry Sharp, yes. I think you really articulated it kind of beautifully, that you're always going to vote third party, even if you don't agree with the third party on a ballot, because it's always still going to be a better choice and a better investment of your vote than picking either party. So I think I start there, and I agree with that entirely. I think the issue is that it's a lot of, I always think that it generally, I don't think that matters that much. I think what most people think matters a lot more than what I think individually. And I think that, we've covered a lot of libertarian events. We hosted the gubernatorial debate with libertarians.
2018.
2018, we covered basically every Green Party candidate that ran in Chicago when we were doing that. So I feel we have a pretty good spread of. My thing is, it's very hard to take a power that's not in power and get people to take it seriously. Because I've talked a lot to people. When we at the events, I would always find people. Kit would find people walking nearby, and we go, "What do you think of the Green Party? You're a person that's not in this. What do you think of the Libertarian Party? You're not someone in this." And most of what we would get is who, or I don't take them seriously. So I think in a lot of ways, if the Libertarians or Greens got people all of a sudden to take them seriously, I think you guys would win a huge amount more races. And that's just a perception issue that has to do with the propaganda that's pushed by both parties that try to make their rivals seem irrelevant. The other thing I notice is that the Greens and Libertarians both, at least in our experience, have a big issue. If there's someone that does start rising up in prominence, one of the two major parties will just take them and put them in their own party. I know we had a couple Greens that were actually doing really well in some local races, and the Democrats were like, we'll manage supply your campaign. We'll give you everything you need. And they flipped ship. So I think it's an issue that if you have a party in America that doesn't have a lot of spending power in a system that's all about spending power, it's a very hard situation to be. Because like me and Kiddo both always vote third party because we get it. We understand what the real game is. The problem is most Americans don't understand what's actually at stake, and they don't understand what they're actually voting for, and they don't understand that the lesser of two evils is the most backwards way of thinking ever. So I think we talked earlier about ranked choice voting. I think that's a way out of it. But I think in a long way saying short, the system of America makes it so it's nearly impossible for third parties to gain power, even though they're really necessary.
And this kind of goes back again with ballot initiatives. One, we got to get rid of money in politics, and we need more people to be aware of, one, that there are other choices besides Democrats and Republicans. And I'd like to elaborate just a little bit more about that conversation I did with Larry Sharp. Thank you so much, Daniel, for bringing up that interview I did. And also Johnny, he wrote, hold on, if we could pull up Johnny's chat again one more time. I saw it up there. All right. Well, if we can't get it up there, then there we go. They have to engage in local elections that get people to take them seriously, which is true. Start small, then grow big. In 2022, obviously in the midterm election cycle, first time ever I've ever witnessed this in my lifetime, a third party almost get on every single ballot for a voter to vote on. And that was the Illinois Libertarian Party. Now, the Illinois Greens were able to get on there. But I've never seen a third party get on there. Now, look, I don't agree with everything the Libertarian Party stands for, but I believe in being consistent. I will not vote Democrat or Republican. I will vote third party. So if Libertarians got on there, I'll vote Libertarian. If there was a Greens and they did what the Libertarians did, I would have voted for Green. I also saw Workers' Party. I saw a few other non-affiliated individuals there too. We have to be consistent and break away. And unfortunately, a lot of Americans have been trained and brainwashed successfully. Not an endorsement, but let's be real here. Corporate media and the two-party system has successfully brainwashed and trained a lot of Americans to throw their vote behind Team Red and Team Blue. And that is a fundamental problem. But there is a bigger issue with third parties. And I want to propose this to the panel. And Terrence, you probably will be familiar with this, as Roger Meadows has brought this up here before. And again, if you're not following Roger Meadows on Twitter, what's the matter with you? You better get on it. That goes for everyone, be it Libertarian, Green, Socialist, Democrat, and Republican. Because you know what? You need to get your learn on with Roger Meadows. So there you go. This goes with the fact that, look, we have money in politics. Corporations can buy off politicians. Wall Street controls our politicians in the Democratic and Republican Party take donations from so many special interest groups. Whoever donates to the DNC also donates to the RNC. I mean, look at what happened with good old Sammy of FTX. He admitted in an interview that he donated not only to Democrats, but he also in secret donated to Republicans. And the problem is, and this is something that Roger has brought up as well, when you have, let's say, a rise of third parties, potentially Libertarians, Greens, let's say Forward Party, People's Party, there is a risk of said parties that could also be corrupt. So instead of a two-party system of corporate politicians, we have a six-party system of corporate politicians. So I propose this question. I'll start off with Daniel too, because I want to get his perspective first. And Madeline, you'll have the closing notes on this. But should we abolish, or use that call for the absolute abolition of political parties as a whole and have a true direct democracy? Is it feasible? Can it be done of independent-oriented candidates running on issues? Daniel, we'll start off with you.
Yeah, I think that if you want to say we either have a two-party system or no parties obviously would be a better choice, because then people more aligned. It has other issues that are come up. And again, the problem is kind of the greater system outside who's in the party, in my mind. But I think it'd be better because then at least people would have a better chance of being picked on their merit rather than their affiliation. I mean, right now, American politics is effectively no different than sports betting or sports politics. It's it's amazing. Turns out that the person you vote for, you're really affected by what zip code you grew up in. Amazing how it works out like that. I think that would help with that. I think there's a lot of other issues, but yeah, to keep it short, I would prefer it other than that, but I think there are better options than even that.
All right. Joe, we'll start. Beware of the political parties from good old George Washington himself. There you go. Good old Georgie boy. All right, Joe.
Yeah, well, when it comes to Georgie boy, I'm not a real big fan of him anyway, because he absolutely leveraged the secret society and the elite groups in order to justify atrocities on American soil against Americans, no less. So this is a problem that goes clear back to 1789, right after the Constitutional Convention. Yes, be wary of the parties. We look at ranked choice voting as one of those options to get away from it because it creates, as Daniel pointed out, the meritocracy as opposed to the tribalism, and what's become the key issue with most of our politics in the United States today. The way I look at it, most Americans right now would be considered Kennedy Democrats and Eisenhower Republicans, and their parties have left them so long ago that they don't know what else to vote for because that's the party grandpa voted for. And that's what we need to step away. We need to create the opportunity and the political awareness for the meritocracy of our leadership rather than simply the tribalism. And one of the things I want to bring up here is Lux pointed out, big corp and big government, they are absolutely the same thing. Corporations buy government to create legislations to give corporations the monopoly. It's a circle jerk. And it's one of those things that we absolutely need to break out of in order to see a future in America. And this goes back to the issue of decentralization versus the collectivization. How do you break the monopolies? How do you create situations where communities are resistant to the monopolies of the corporation and a centralized government? So absolutely. And as far as the technology, and that's the big thing that we're looking at. What is the technology? Are we technologically capable at this point of establishing a one person, one vote? Or are we still in that position where we have to go with the representative government using a ranked choice voting in order to accomplish the goals? And is representative voting or a representative election, a representative democracy, still going to be viable,
right,
independent of the centralization that currently exists? Can we break it down? Can we bring it down to the community? And can we do that collaboration between communities that doesn't require the centralization of the power in DC? I think we can.
All right. Terrence, the floor is yours. Obviously, you've had some back and forth between Roger Meadows on this issue, so let's hear your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the fact is, when you talk about the idea of abolishing parties and moving towards a direct democracy, I think, in an ideal world, I think that would be the kind of world that we'd like to have. I just have a lot of trouble seeing that happen in reality. Unfortunately, I think, and by the way, like, I'm working with Roger on universal healthcare. We're part of a group that I co-founded called Medicare for All Everywhere. We're trying to go sort of through the states to get to universal healthcare, Medicare for all everywhere. And so we're trying to apply that principle of direct democracy as much as we can. But yeah, I have a lot of trouble seeing just the way that human nature functions, that we won't just continue to factionalize, find other ways to factionalize that might not be political parties in name, but are in essence, quite similar to the political party system that we have, just named differently. But I'm very much, in favor of strengthening things like ballot initiatives, the ability to do those in the states. In Massachusetts, we don't have the best form. And by the way, Roger and I have talked about this. We don't have the best form of ballot initiative ability in our state, in that there are ways that the legislature can, weaken or overturn things that are passed by ballot initiative. And I guess, I hate being kind of naysayer here, but I guess I also do struggle with the idea of seeing a world where everyone is willing to participate as much as they should in a kind of direct democracy. I think there is a degree to which folks like the ability to elect a representative to hopefully represent their interests, and then be able to kind of kick them out if they don't, the next time around. And by the way, I'm very much in favor of working to build a system where folks are more engaged, between the elections. And I think that that's a huge problem, and one that I'm kind of investing myself in, right now, is trying to get into the more of the community organizing and building, some more movement on the issues, kind of bringing people over to my side, so that, if I run, again, then they might be more likely to vote for a candidate that has those views. But yeah, for what do you got, Roger?
Yeah, so Roger Meadows wrote this. All of a sudden I'm getting some background noise. Okay, hold on. So Roger Meadows wrote this. Notice the contradiction between the type of citizen ballot initiatives red voters vote for and the red politicians they elect. Terrence, invite Joe to Medicare for all everywhere. And I don't know why I'm getting some background noise. We'll figure that out. Hold on, I'll mute myself. But all right, continue on, Terrence, and then Eric, you follow afterwards.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short. So what's interesting about what Roger's saying, and this might go a little bit to what Joe's saying as well, and why I'd be happy to include him in Medicare for All everywhere. And so I'll send you an email invite after the call. Is basically that in a lot of ways our democracy doesn't break down the way our politicians would like us to have it break down, and have sort of tried to frame our democracy in a way that makes it break down that way. And that's gerrymandering. That's, but it's also just like the boundaries of our states, right? So our states are actually not really a good representation of where we are politically. And so if you look at, some of the ballot initiatives, you'll see, in Oregon, the breakdown on universal health care, Measure 111, I want to say it was, is really, it's a West versus East Oregon question. And West supports it, and the East broadly is against it. South Dakota, I forget what the ballot initiative was there. Again, sort of regionally, there's a big discrepancy there. The right, the eastern portion of the state was supporting the ballot initiative, and the western part of the state was against it. And so when it comes to kind of decentralization and sort of rethinking, the way that we do our political system, I think a lot of it is taking a look at the degree to which, our politics are based in our history, and borders were sort of constructed in a way that I guess took away a lot of power from us. And so I think there's a lot of room to think about issues more regionally. And notice that perhaps I'll just give a hot take here. Perhaps we should democratize our state borders and allow people to choose, kind of what entities they want to associate with, what kind of system they want to be involved in, and use that as kind of a guiding star for moving our politics forward.
All right. And there we go. See, hey, this is the whole point. We're talking about third parties and independence. So there you go, Terrence. And I will actually send this invite to you too. I like to learn more about Medicare, Medicare for All, your organization you're part of, and have you guys on my show. Eric, the floor is yours.
Yeah, the topic of just eliminating all parties, that's never going to happen. That's the whole issue we're kind of facing right now. Is they have consolidated power within themselves so dramatically that that's how people see is it's only two options they have. Now, if we could locally legislate the fact that corporations shouldn't be able to donate to political parties all out and all together, that means no PACs, no just giant corporation donors, so that you don't have the lobbyists getting their hooks into local politicians, and then that builds from the ground up. I mean, we got to actually address the issues that are the biggest problems. Saying that we're just going to get rid of all the parties, they have to agree to that. They're not going to do that because that's giving up the power they have. But if we at the local levels undercut the power that they have, then we can start making strides in changing how our constitutional republic that we are in actually works, and actually keep the democratic order the way it should work instead of the way it is now, where it's just chaos. And the continued chaos is only going to build the need for third parties, of which, even in my election here in Pennsylvania, I mean, so many Republicans told me they're changing their party affiliation. So many Democrats told me they're changing their party affiliation. They're sick of the two parties. As everybody said, it's not your mother's and father's Democratic or Republican Party that they're actually being represented by. It's some new thing of which they play both sides of the coin and both sides of the field, and they're not looking out for the people, which always and should first and foremost be what every politician does, is be a servant to the people. And just the fact that they won't make themselves available to talk to actual people was one of the biggest reasons I had the success I had in PA. It wasn't the greatest success, but then again, I'm a nobody. Nobody knows me. I went around the whole state and I had 42 out of 67 counties people voted for me. And just even having that little bit is encouraging to see that people are looking for a real viable option, whatever party it may be. I'm not saying I'm 100% for the Libertarian Party. I am, because I'm integral. I've been offered to go to the Republican Party multiple times, because even before they put Oz up, they were looking for a replacement for that position because they knew he was a turd. So, self-integrity is a huge thing.
There you go. And as I like to joke on the show, and maybe I'm being mean here, he reminded me of a dime store version of Marty Bird from the Ozarks. So there you go. But then again, I shouldn't be too mean to people. So there we go. I need to calm down on that one. But also on top of that too, look, I will have to say in regards to this, I want Madeline to have the final word on this one here too. When it comes down to third parties, I'm all for it. But if we can get to direct democracy, maybe that's something we can get there. Will we see it in our lifetimes? Probably not, but I think that's probably the goal that we should achieve through organization, and so that people can actually break out of the neoliberal system. Will we see it soon? Probably not. But Madeline, I want to give you the floor to you now. Please take it away.
All right, thank you so much. When I ran for office, and I ran for U.S. Senate twice and governor once and vice president with Ralph Nader the other time. These were not what you would think of as typical politician campaigns. These were campaigns where I would go to meetings of homeless people. I would go to the homeless shelters. I would talk to people who were homeless. I would stand by the immigrants who were getting screwed, excuse my French, screwed by ICE repeatedly, and talk to the immigrants. I would talk to women who were fighting for whatever, at that particular moment. We need to think about politics and elections differently. They're not about somebody up on a stage saying, this is what I'm going to do for you. No, it's about bringing the voices of the people who've been left out of the system repeatedly, bringing those voices forward and speaking about or working for a different kind of political system. When I ran for governor and for U.S. Senate, I ran unabashedly as an eco-socialist. I ran as someone who said capitalism will not answer these problems. I also ran as someone who said, well, and actually now, I'm no longer in the United States. I'm moving to Colombia because we need to have, look what happened in Colombia with Gustavo Petro and his election. Many independents from different political parties and people from different political parties united around an historic pact in order to get past this factionalization that we've talked about. I don't think it's only direct democracy. I think it's grassroots organizing with a purpose. And that purpose is not to build the Republican Party or build the Democratic Party. I can't go to some of these events anymore, because the ultimate goal is not to change the law or get things to be put on the table that haven't been. The ultimate goal is go vote Democrat, go vote Republican. I can't do that. That's not going to get us anywhere. We have to vote to get, or we have to organize rather, to get big money out of politics. We have to get the corruption out of politics. We have to implement ranked choice voting. And our political system is leaving too many people out of it. Look at all the homeless people in California, for example. Where are their voices? Where are the students, the thousands of students at universities in California who are sleeping in their cars because they don't have the money to rent a dorm room? Where are their voices? How do we get that? Or how do we get that in? We also, as you all probably are very much aware, Starbucks people are organizing. Amazon workers are organizing. The organizing of labor is back in a very strong way. And so we need to promote those voices. And I could do it only, I could say what needed to be said, but if workers stood in front of me and made those statements to the voting public, that would have more more of an impact. And really, despite the super or hyper partisanship that we've had ever since Donald Trump ran for office, larger, growing numbers of voters want an independent choice. And I think in order to make that happen, they need to see the work of those independent candidates or those independents. I'm very grateful to be on this panel, but you notice I'm the only female voice out of 6. We need better representation. We need people to say, I can do that. I can be a part of a movement that's going to change things. The indigenous as well. These are groups. We want to get off fossil fuels. Indigenous need to be part of the discussion and a very big part of it. So that's my take on things.
And I'd also like to add this here too, and this is my direct challenge to third parties. Because look, I'm all on board. I'm all on board with interviewing third party candidates, being on libertarian podcasts, Greens, all that kind of stuff. I'm all happy to share my perspective and point of view. But I think Daniel can back me up on this one. From 2017 up to even the 2020 election, it was always pulling teeth. Well, with the Green Party, libertarians were more on point. But when it came time to, doing any kind of interviews or covering debates or doing an own independent third party debates, most notably the one we tried to organize in 2020, we reached out to the Green Party nominee who was running for president. We reached out to the Libertarian Party who was running for president. We even reached out to Mark Charles, who's running as an independent, not party affiliate. Mark Charles got back to us and said, yes, I'd be more than happy to. The representatives that I reached out to, both the Libertarians and the Greens, were said the most asinine thing. I should not have sworn, but I'm sorry. Sorry, YouTube. But the dumbest thing I ever heard. We're waiting to be on a debate stage with Trump and Biden, which, by the way, Green Party leadership, Libertarian, that's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. Stop. Full stop. Unless you get 15% in the polls, that's not going to happen. The system's rigged against you. So my challenge with third parties, independents, and Joe, Terrence, Eric, Madeline, I'm going to be asking you a yes or no answer on this one because we are running short on time, and I barely even got to all my other questions. I wrote a lot, and I have my screen in front of me, and now I want to cry. But anyways, different story altogether. Will you help promote and talk to your colleagues in who are running third parties, be they libertarians, Greens, independents, etc., to be on independent media, to reach out to independent media? Because obviously corporate media is never, ever And I hate to be that father figure with the whiskey in his hand and a pipe in the other hand and say, like, that's not going to happen. But it's not going to happen. Yes or no, will you help spread the word to your third-party colleagues? Like, hey, we need to go on independent media. We need to start reaching out more. Will you do it? Daniel, I definitely want to get your commentary on this too. So starting off with you, and then Joe, Madeline, Eric, Terrence, obviously, of course. So obviously we got to keep the answers short. Daniel, go ahead. Take it away first.
Oh, take me last.
Okay, go ahead. Joe, go.
No, absolutely. Do the outreach. Find those podcasters. Find the third-party media. Find the independent media, whether it's indie left, indie right. Talk to the people. Help understand, create those bridges between languaging. There's so often, I was just on a podcast recently with, doesn't matter, somebody, and we were talking about the difference in the languaging between the right and the left. We're all affected by the same problem. The same problem is the unification of corporations and government against us, the people. However you look at it, corporations and government, they've united. It is, stronger together, financial banks, corporations, so on. And that is what we need to break. And one of the things, Sean, I'm going to go ahead and target you here real quick before I pass this on. Okay. Legislation against unions is the biggest problem for unions right now. It is a violation of freedom of association. It is a violation of the right to collectivization. Okay, while some of us may disagree, ultimately, the libertarians' goal is delegislation of human rights.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's up to you.
All right. Terrence, are you going to tell your colleagues in the third parties and independent movements to reach out to independent media? Because let's face it, it's long overdue. Terrence, take it away.
Bit of a leading question, but yeah, absolutely. No,
I'm running short on time. I don't got my other questions. I can't get to them all. I'm sorry.
No, I absolutely. I think the idea of rejecting connections, is a fool's errand if you're trying to build power. I think we absolutely need to seek those connections wherever we can. And by the way, I think building connections between these third parties, as I think has been mentioned at least a couple of times, is also very important. If you're going to reject those connections, you're spinning your wheels.
All right. Eric, the floor is yours, my friend.
Always should take every opportunity that comes away, no matter who it is. You never know who you're going to reach just by having that conversation. So yes, definitely. And for all the rail workers that were just railroaded by the government, I stand with you guys, because there's no reason that they should take away your collective bargaining rights just because it's a national security risk. Those are your rights. That's the reason you're in the union. It should be defended.
Yes. And by the way, in regards towards libertarianism, look, I voted for a lot of the libertarian candidates who were running in 2022. And let me be very clear here. I've spoken to a lot of libertarians, and I think one of the inside joke I've had with my friends in the Illinois Libertarian Party is put 10 libertarians in a room, you get 100 opinions. So there you go. But it's true. Come on, Joe, Eric.
It is hurting cats at times, but we're all at the same goal. And at the end of the day, as long as there's a uniting voice, just one, because everybody else is trying to divide, it can work.
There you go. And Madeline, I believe you'll be the next person to speak, and then Daniel, the final word will be yours. Madeline, take it away. Unfortunately, you're muted, Madeline.
I thought I unmuted myself. I think I did a quick unmute, remute without noticing it. Almost every interview I gave during the last 3 campaigns I ran was with independent media, because the big media doesn't, mainstream media doesn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And I also, during the pandemic, when I ran, and there were quarantines, and I wasn't going door to door, I used social media as much as possible, with signs going to every county in New Jersey and putting out our message on social media, putting out our message on independent media. It has to happen, and all the independent media need to be aware of who's running and why they're running. And I think it would make a difference. I also think, and I know you didn't ask this, and I'll make it really quick, We need to have international solidarity. We need to have solidarity geographically throughout the country. We can't have one group saying put all the polluting industry in one spot and leave us out of it. We have to understand, we have to realize that what we're working for is a better community, a better whole. And I think we need to be looking at independent media and promoting alternatives to capitalism at the same time.
All right. And then Daniel, obviously, we are running short on time, so the final word belongs to you.
So I'm not going to answer your question because as someone who runs a media company, it's sort of obvious, but I would say, I think we can all agree on this. I think all the people on here can agree on this. The problem with the American system is a horse that's owned by someone who says that they're going to replace it with an electric car by installing a V8 engine in its stomach.
I think that's a perfect analogy, and I urge everyone who's green, libertarian, independent, socialist, hell, even Democrat and Republican to carry that analogy there too. I want to thank all of the panelists for being here. We are running short on time, so I want to wish all four of you a very safe New Year's Eve weekend. I hope that all of you have much success in 2023. And Madeline, were you going to say something as well?
Yeah, but first we're not. I guess you're counting Daniel as someone else, not because there's five of us.
Oh, yes. Well, Daniel will be with me for the next panel. And I think
okay.
Joe. I think Joe. Joe will be with me too on that one. We'll be talking about the failure of Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future. But anyways, that's something I'm looking forward to as well. But I wish all the success for third parties and independents. And if you are a Democratic voter and Republican voter and you're tired of being screwed over by the two-party system, wake up and realize that there are other options. There are ballot initiatives. It's time to start building movements and organizations not connected to Washington, D.C. Now's the time to support third parties. And look, I did this in the previous elections, and I did this in the current one. I voted straight third party through and through. Libertarian, Green, Workers' Party, Socialist, Independent, etc. Why? Because I will not support a two-party system that acts like an abuser. I will not support a two-party system that is systematically designed to keep people oppressed. The same people who donate to the Democratic Party and are the same people who donate to the Republican Party. They dance and drink because they believe you're weak. These politicians, they don't like you, they don't think about you, and they don't respect you. So if they don't respect you, why are you wasting your time with an abuser? Take off your sunglasses, show me that shiner, and say, hey, I'm not going to support the two-party system. Vote independent. Do what you have to do, but you don't owe these politicians a goddamn thing. Make 2023 your year so that we actually break away from neoliberalism. There we go.
Yup. Happy New Year.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you. Please,
Thank
everyone,
you.
be safe. Let's get set up now for our next panel of the day.